Good afternoon, everyone. This is a meeting of the City Council's Transportation Committee. Today is Monday, September 11th. I'll call this meeting to order. First item of business is consideration of the minutes from the August 28th, 2023 meeting. I did have a couple of corrections. In item 2, just need to make sure that Councilor Wood's name is spelled correctly, and in number 3, second to last sentence, it's M as in man rather than NPO. It's MPO. So if there's no other additions or corrections, we'll consider a motion to approve those minutes as written.
Move to approve the August 28th minutes as stated.
All right. Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next up, we have the Birmingham Regional Paratransit Consortium Class-Tran Agreement. This is, if you recall from the last meeting, we recommended some changes to the agreement to further spell out the agreement or the obligations of Class-Tran and some of the reporting requirements, and those have been reflected in the updated agreement. Chief Mitchell?
Yeah, thank you, Councilor. I was trying to pull it up, but I think for the actual Class-Tran agreement, we were able to put more reporting requirements for Class-Tran, and hopefully it's satisfactory to the committee. If there's anything else that we need to add, please let us know, and then we'll add it into the agreement.
I actually I looked over it, and I would say that very pleased with the update. And the one thing I will point out is at least in the version that I have, that under that first section of the scope of services, there's sort of 10, I think it's supposed to be 10 obligations there, but the last one didn't get numbered, I guess. So
What page? What
page 2, under scope of services, here's 1 through 9. It looks like that last sentence is supposed to be number 10, but that didn't get marked.
Okay, we'll get it corrected.
Overall, I think, this is significantly improved. Just give the committee a chance to skim over that.
Not nothing good on this one.
All right.
We don't have it.
Yeah, it's in there. It's in there. All right. So, what's the committee's pleasure on this one with regard to Class-Tran?
Will we send this to the full council with an affirmative recommendation?
Second.
All right. It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. That motion passes. Next up, we have Public Transportation Services Agreement between BJCTA and the City of Birmingham. Chief Mitchell?
Yes, sir. So thank you, council, again for allowing us to get some time to put some more wording into this, this agreement between the city and the BJCTA. If you note on page 3, under 3.3, it's the language that was submitted and kind of recommended by this group and BDOT. I was hoping that, I see James Fowler just signed in, so I was gonna give him a minute to come in and give his reasoning behind it, but unless.
Right on cue.
Sorry.
No, you good?
Just wanted to give a report, just a summary of what we added to the agreement under 3.3 under reports.
Yeah. So, you had a chance to look at it?
Yes.
Okay. So, the main thing is that we kept in there a lot of the data that we had requested in previous agreements, but also made reference to the Avail system, which, as I've learned in talking to representatives from the Transit Authority, it's being set up in stages, like sometimes complex software is. The Avail system is the data management and system management system that they're using to track their operations and run their operations. So they track on-time performance and where their buses are, and departure times and boarding volumes. So it's a system set up for transit authorities to use to aggregate all that data in one place. And so they are supplementing a lot of those things that we asked for above, which include things like on-time performance, monthly ridership by route, average weekday boardings, average Saturday boardings, transit authorities' goals and efforts to increase ridership. So they're supplementing that with the Avail system. Some of it is stood up now, that new software, and then over the next year they're continuing to stand up the other modules that will allow them to continue to supplement and track some of that information. From what I have seen of the system and demonstrations that they've given to me, it looks very effective, and it's something that seems to be commonly used by other transit authorities around the country, so I feel good with that. And so they're continuing to commit to monthly reporting, and they'll continue to expand that as the Avail system comes on board. Secondary to that, we had also asked them to commit to a timeline for completing a strategic plan. So that's the second paragraph under section 3.3. And so they have agreed to present a strategic plan to the City of Birmingham by the end of the first quarter of calendar year 2024. So that would be March of 2024. So they are working on that now with a consultant. It will take them kind of several months to do their stakeholder interviews and to work through that and commit to what their strategic objectives are. But that's the timeline that they have committed to.
Okay.
And council, we're still open to adding any more language that we feel needs to add more meat or more deliverables to this contract. I think in our conversation, we can either add it under 1.4 or add some more reporting mechanisms in 3.3.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think what we're trying to accomplish here is to, for lack of a better way of explaining it, increase the granularity of the reporting that we're being provided now. So the current level of reporting is a, good executive summary type report where it gives you, visibility on what ridership looks like at a quick glance. But the highest level of detail is a monthly interval. So there's no more specificity than a 1 month, time window per fixed route. And I think what at least some of us would like to see is to better understand ridership behavior, like on the individual routes, you know, what time of day is ridership at the highest, what locations have the highest number of boardings, and really trying to just, you know, understand what riders are doing and perhaps, you know, with that information, target resources accordingly. So it sounds like the Avail system can or is capable of providing that level of detail. So what's in the agreement would give us access to that type of information, but it wouldn't necessarily require that that be included in the report. Is that an accurate summary?
I think it is, but you want to let them speak on what the Avail system can do? All right.
Well, I think, I guess the question is, I agree, I think that it can provide that level of detail. Do we want to require them to provide that level of detail on a monthly basis? So time of day, specific stop location, ridership, are there some others?
Right. Cancellations is another one that I'm, you know, had mentioned previously. So, you know, not only cancellations, but sort of speaking to, you know, why those cancellations have occurred, which, you know.
It can be a whole list of variables.
Yeah. I mean, you know, probably 95% of them fall under one category, but nevertheless, I think that, you know, at the end of the day, the city is paying for a service. If that service cannot be delivered for one reason or another, then we need to understand, you know, why when I ordered French fries, I can't be provided French fries. I don't know how to explain it more simply than that. So,
Okay.
You know, I think it's important to, you know, taxpayers to understand, you know, what we're asking and what they're receiving. And the best way to ensure, you know, that is to spell it out in the agreement, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. So, I mean, what I question, you know, now with this new information about data from the Avail system is balancing, you know, my own interest in wanting to see more specificity versus what are my colleagues on the council reasonably going to, you know, to look at.
Yeah, I wonder if a better way, sorry, you finish, I don't want to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I mean, so prior to this, we haven't had any visibility on anything other than what BJCTA has been reporting to us. So, you know, provided that we're making the assumption that the Avail data provides us more granularity, then this language is a step forward because we will now have visibility on things that we have previously not had visibility on. So that's good. I would say, you know, taking it perhaps a step forward is that, you know, perhaps we should include something along the lines of, you know, on an annual basis, the BJCTA will, conduct an in-person review of the data, so that, you know, staff, the council, whoever, has the opportunity to go deeper than those monthly executive summary reports. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, so I guess I got a couple of questions. I guess I'll start where you left off and work backwards. But yeah, like I said, you utilize a new system where the data is a little more readily available. I would prefer to have the data. I think you can have a summary and then have a few more pages if people want to keep reading. But I think having that, more so because the conversations I think we end up having in the community are more so global transit plan, like what are we doing, and so understanding like what's actually happening now and where the needs are and what the actual effect is right now is having will help us kind of see the bigger picture. Now, I guess my question was you adding in the avail, like actually mentioning a specific program, and I want to make sure I'm not confusing two different things that BJCTA is working on, but I know we talked about y'all were bidding something and would have something up in the next 6 months. Was that the plug-in that maybe combine your two systems that weren't talking together? Separate from Avail?
No, it was actually Avail. And I think we're committed to giving you all what you need. One suggestion, maybe we gave you a template of what you think you need, pass that to you and see if that's reasonable. And then, work from there. So how does that sound? If we will come up with something that Avail will be giving us, and then let you look at that and see if that fits your desires and what you need.
Oh.
Does that sound like a
Yeah.
plan?
No, I think that's probably fine to do it that way. So Avail, y'all just selected that vendor?
No, Avail has been with us several years, but they made enhancements to their system. And this is something new that we actually get it with them and they will provide to us. So it's not a new system.
Okay, so what's the system, I guess the name of it, that will, I guess, allow you to get on the one ticketing system? So is that what?
Yeah, well, we're looking at, that's separate from Avail. We're looking at, one ticket that will actually get you on the BRT and get you on fixed route too, but that's not.
That's what's more like 6 months down the road.
Right. Well, that's down the road too. And Avail, trying to get it all down, make sure that the information is correct before we get it to you. I think it's one of the things that we needed more time to do. So that's kind of where we stand.
All
But,
right.
we recognize that the city wants better, more credible information, more than just a summary. So we're committed to working with you to get you whatever you may need in order to, we understand that the city pays us $14 million and that's not chump change. So, we understand what you're looking for. I think we have a good idea and I think we're committed, though I know we're committed to providing that information. I think at this point we just need more time to make sure we can pull that together and get it to you accurately.
So basically the system as it operates and functions now is capable of delivering the deliverables that are listed in this agreement?
Yes, it is, and we're committed, if we need to do something in addition to what we have right now, we're committed to do it.
Okay, I think it was adding cancellations to the list.
Right. I made a list of what.
To the ridership report.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, because like I said, we end up having these, I guess, the inability to have a granular conversation with residents because we don't, I end up talking more theory about, because we don't have that detailed information available. I think I would probably like to get that on, I guess, no less than quarterly basis, as far as the detail.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I don't see any, if the system can do it, I I think the frequency is every time it gets access to the meter, that data, it will now. I don't want to overcommit to what we're doing, but if we can do it monthly, we'll do it monthly, it's more quarterly. But it really, I don't, being in the finance, what you can do quarterly, you can do monthly, if you get information on that routine basis. So, I don't want to speak as a commitment right now, but whatever you need and whatever it is to make us more visible and transparent, I think we're committed to doing that.
Right. So, there's probably a variety of different ways to accomplish this, but, if a Vail has some sort of dashboard or some, mechanism where we could click on a link within the monthly report to get more detailed information, that might be, one way of accomplishing the same thing. I'm trying to balance the fact that we got a lot of different variety of issues that we have to pay attention to, and so the capacity to go deep in, looking at different types of data and understanding what's going on is limited. But at the same time, I know that some of us want to do that. So, again, this accomplishes the goal of giving us visibility to information that we have not had access to before. So it's a step in the right direction. So we just need to figure out, how to do that. Again, I would say that having, an annual opportunity to sit down with the transportation committee or some other, assembled group or whatever, and do that deep dive would, I think, be good to in the agreement say that, at least once a year we're going to set aside some time to really drill down and give the administration and the council the opportunity to understand how the system is performing and what the ridership is doing, and at that time be able to sort of digest that information and consider potential tweaks. Yeah.
Well, I agree. Whatever we give you actually helps us perform better too, because we want to be a data-driven organization, and I don't think you make credible decisions without that. So, when requests like this come from the cities, like any other customer, I really think it's good for us because it actually makes us look at the information differently. And really, what story is the information telling, and what decisions should be made in the future based on what we see today. So, we're committed to doing that. And, we can come up with some sort of template, dashboards that we think would work for you. And then if you look at those and see that you want something different, because I don't think this is as one shot and then that's it. It's probably an evolving situation
Right.
where we continue to actually, give you different information based on what the trends are, what we see, and then what changes are in the industry or what changes are in the city. So I see this as an evolving situation that we're committed to really, making sure that you as our largest customer is definitely satisfied with what we're doing.
Mr. Perkins?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Darrell Berkeley. I'm a consultant for the BJCTA. Just as follow up what Mr. Dixon said, we've had a Vail for a while. When Rick Shaw came in her team, they found out they had not been upgraded properly in the last several years. So while the system is old, what we can do with it is better now because it's been upgraded, which allows us to give you some of the things you want. I don't know, and I'll ask Ms. Pig or Mr. Dixon, I don't know if we can give you access to the system, but this template, I think we can find out what you want and give it to you. The only thing I will add is, I would even go one step further on your ask and give us a very specific month you want to do the review, the granular review. Let's put that in the document, so we all know up front. This month, we're all gonna sit down. And so we're prepared, and you guys are prepared, as all everybody's build the agenda, if you will. I think that's fair. I think let's do that.
Yeah, January. January. I just put it out there because that's, ahead of the budget cycle. And it's a slow month
You wanna think
generally.
about it?
And yeah,
It's never a slow month.
it's slow.
That's what Chad's come up with.
Well, it's never a slow month for the city, but it's a slow month in terms of our social calendars usually.
Well, yeah.
So,
But, and Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Dickinson's point, I think what we're trying to get to is almost that level of transparency that the board gets, that we should get the same, gist of what they get, because at some point they're asking for the same amount of information or documents as we are.
don't make assumptions.
I'm just saying. I just think it should be on that same level since we're the largest funder of the system.
Yes, absolutely. One other thing that I mentioned is that I see that the paragraph about the strategic plan was, put in here. That looks like, it's mentioned, but not more than that. So first quarter of 2024, it doesn't spell out, anything that, it doesn't spell out what a strategic plan is, or anything that we're anticipating to see incorporated in that strategic plan. So my fear is that if there's not that level of specificity included in this agreement language, that, we may be disappointed with what we receive. So I think it would be prudent on our part to spell out what our expectations are. I'm going to acknowledge that this is a step in the right direction, that we're including this language in the agreement. But I feel like it's important, if we're asking for something, that both parties understand what's being asked. And, an open-ended, nebulous kind of ask is an opportunity for folks to not meet expectations, in my opinion. So,
Yeah. I think I went to visit Dade County, and they basically met with their transportation people, and they gave me like their book, MPO kind of strategic plan, and they get mapped out like 20 to 25 years down the road of what they wanted to accomplish, what that looked like, capital, operational. And, I think we just have to start that process. And it's like incorporating everybody who's doing transit locally, and engaging some people that probably haven't been engaged, that do have some transportation roles. So,
I think that's an important point, that part of spelling out expectations is acknowledging that what we're asking for is not something trivial. This is, what we're looking for is not something that can be produced by a few people in-house meeting once a week in a committee meeting and, coming up with a report.
Well, our strategic plan, Transco is recognized in the industry as helping with the strategic plan. I believe we'll hit all the facets that you're looking for, but I agree, if you can spell out, the metrics that you want us to see, we'll put that in there. Of course, strategic plans are gonna be different because, based on the organization, because they have different goals and different strategies. But, you know, we agree that it should be something that, at the end, we give you something, we say, well, this is not at all what we expected. So I think communication and continue to dialogue with each other about the plan would help us make sure when we finish it and give it to you, it's something that you'd be happy with, something that's credible based on your expectations.
Right. And I'll also acknowledge that, you know, again, this is a significant undertaking for any organization. This is the first time that this language is being, you know, formally included in an agreement between the city and BJCTA. Well-executed strategic plan for this size of operation may take quite some time to really dial in, especially when you're reaching as far out as 25 years. So personally, I would not expect a strategic plan that may come in the first quarter of 2024 to be quite so comprehensive, under the assumption that I have not laid eyes on a strategic plan for BJCTA at this point. I cannot definitively say that one exists, because I have never had the opportunity to put my eyes on one. So I have to make the assumption that we're starting at ground zero from here and building something. So what may come in the next, 6 to 9 months has to be, started. I'm making the assumption that it has to be
Well,
built.
it has actually started really several months ago. Transport Pros hired at least 6 months ago to help develop a strategic plan. And as Transport is a recognized company in the industry with the people that with transit background. So we're not trying to do this internally without sales. We're actually reaching out to other people to bring their knowledge to the board. And it's more than just, and I agree with you totally, Councilor Quinn, we're not just meeting once a week or something, bringing in internal groups to do this. We're actually reaching out to other agencies to help us. And we can look at modeling some things that's out there in the industry to make sure that we hit the pivotal points that you think are pivotal to the best of organizations. So we're doing that. And I believe sincerely that when you see it, you'll be happy with what you get. So please know that we're taking whatever you're saying to us very seriously, and we're not, sitting out with that. I can put myself in your shoes. If you haven't seen something before, I haven't seen a strategic plan for the transit agency myself, so probably it does stand to reason that one doesn't exist or one doesn't exist that we have to follow. But I think that's why His Executive Director Charlotte Shaw, that's one of her main focuses, is to get a strategic plan and bring something with a strategic plan that's credible and actually meets the strategies that we're trying to accomplish. Because I've seen plans before developed at other organizations. When you finish it, you put them on the shelf and keep going in the direction that you have been going, because they really don't support and reflect the organization and the future of the organization. That we're committed not to do that.
Right. Yeah, I look at it, as from the perspective that, the city of Birmingham and all the other municipalities in the metro area that contract with BJCTA for services, we are really investors in the system. And from our standpoint, we need to know strategically if there's an immediate need that we're trying to meet, but there's also a long-term consideration. And, you know, if you're serving Big Macs today and your future plan is to go vegan and you're only offering, you know, cucumber salads in the future, then, you know, maybe my level of commitment to long-term investment with that entity is not the same. If, you know, the product that I'm getting today is going to be significantly different in the future. So it's important for us to have that sort of visibility. And, you know, strategic plans are living documents. They can dramatically change depending on circumstances, you know, economy and public, you know, health crisis and all sorts of things can influence what happens, you know, or what is incorporated in those documents. Technology is a big consideration. So we understand, you know, that what gets included in a document first quarter of 2024 likely will change over time, but it's very important in this type of work that you're actually putting things down on paper, because this is a relationship, you know, and a relationship is only as good as the communication in that relationship. So having expectations but never giving voice to those expectations is a recipe for a bad relationship. So we don't want that. You know, we want a good relationship. So everybody literally needs to be on the same page.
And I totally agree with that. I think this is a very positive, you know, I look at this as positive. We can sit down with your largest constituent and find out what you want and what your expectations are. And I think that's really what's needed, and it works best for both parties.
Absolutely. You know, the inverse has not always been true, and I think that has gotten us into trouble. And I'm not going to, you know, put the blame on one side or the other, but, you know, there's probably equally shared responsibility. But ultimately, the way to mitigate those types of situations in the future is to sit down, talk it out, spell it out, make sure it's in the agreement, and that way, you know, if a problem does arise, then either party can go back to the document and say, well, this is what you asked for, and, you know, here's what was delivered. So at the end of the day, we're trying to make this relationship better, and again, the way to do that is through better communication.
Totally.
I guess we can save that money on bringing in Dr. Phil.
I got a couple of quick questions. I think Councilman Lewis hit on it. I think for me, I remember this guy coming to council and was talking about the fees, the astronomical fees he had to pay, like from one, like a fixed route, and then I think he got on the express. So that's a concern for me. And what are you guys doing to make sure, like, I hear everybody talking about this strategic plan. I'm glad people are recognizing that data is so important. It seems like that's just been a big issue just across the board, you know, throughout the city, no data. Everybody's basing things and doing things based on what we think. And it's not what we think, it's with the people that are using these services. Like, how are you guys engaging your riders? Like, to find out, like, what is it that they need? And what time does the fixed rate, you know, there's runs, and what time, you know, there's a stop? Like, some people have to be to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. Like, do you have, like, services that can accommodate people that way, or just some of these micro-transit services? Like, what time do they get started?
We started, I think, around what time do you peak, to speak more specifically to this. We started about 4 in the morning because we know people have to work early. Now, the situation where the guy might have had to pay something and pay another fee to get on BRT, I think early on was a situation where fixed route on BRT, you didn't have synergy there necessarily for a person to get on a fixed route bus and transfer to the BRT. I think that has been resolved now for two reasons. We first addressed it, and secondly, we're not charging for the BRT right now because the city actually, and we appreciate that, gave $300,000 to us to not charge fares on the BRT while we worked out all the kinks with how we would actually set up the transfer between getting on the BRT and getting on the fixed route bus. So I think that's been resolved actually, and we'll make sure going forward in the future that we work out situations that don't work adversely against our customers and riders. But of course, as you know, incorporating the BRT was a major move for us, and that was going to be some hiccups at the beginning initially. And I think we worked that out. And again, thanks to you, the City Council and Transportation Committee, for making that contribution to us so that we actually have more time to work out things and not inconvenience the riders.
Okay, thank you.
So, if I understand correctly, as was mentioned before, BJCTA has contracted for the development of a unified payment platform and a mobile app. Is that right?
We're working on that. Actually, our IT people, I think we have contracted. I don't want to speak too specifically to that, but that's something that we would have. I think sometime early 2024 was out. So I think I can get you an answer to that, whether or not we actually have a signed contract with that.
Yeah, I would appreciate an update on that because somewhere along the way I got the impression that that process was already underway and that, at the time, anticipated delivery of that was sometime in the fall.
Okay. Well, I know it is underway, whether or not the contract aspect of that, because I'm thinking that Herbert Walker, who we met, is working on that. Now, Herbert Walker is actually kind of listed as an employee, but he's actually an independent contractor himself.
Mm-hmm.
So to the extent that he's working on that, that may be where we've actually had a contract there with his company.
Okay, gotcha.
So I think that's what you're referring to as a contract, but I don't want to speak to that specifically without actually knowing that his company actually has a contract with us.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, sir.
There was a miscommunication. We initially thought that with our consulting on board already and internal staff, we actually thought we could deliver within a few months in the fall. I think we said that because we thought that. Is that correct?
Right.
So since then, we found that quite frankly, just couldn't. Not with our existing in-house staff, not with our existing consultants. So we're now doing an RFP to actually get it done. So it will be longer than the fall. But when we do it, because we're going through the proper process now, we'll end up with a better product in the end. So yeah, I'm sure we said that, because at that point we actually thought that. We did not and we could not. And that's a short version.
Yeah, and I think they said a few months back that they were RFPing it, and they said they would select a vendor in the fall. Might have been the most recent piece that we got.
Nah, we actually did it.
Well, I'm saying the most recent update. But I did want to go back to the reporting piece and make sure we're, I guess, clear on what it is we're asking for. It sounds like we want to go, do we want to, I guess, develop multiple reports where you have this higher level report that's due the 20th of each month and then add a more detailed report less frequently, or do we want to just make one report and it needs to be more detailed on that 20th of each month?
So, I mean, it's open to suggestion, but I think what I would suggest is that we continue to receive the monthly reports that sort of provide that high-level overview. I mean, the exception to that would be I would like to see the cancellation information included in the PDF that gets sent to us each month. But, you know, when it comes to the higher level of detail, I think that type of information would be more appropriate for an annual review. So say in January, you know, we set aside a day to have a deep dive with the administration and the council and BJCTA, and we review the previous year's data, looking at the individual components of BJCTA service, BRT, fixed route, paratransit, and
Microtransit.
executive sedan service and whatever else you guys are doing over there. And really, you know, have that time set aside to really, you know, go into greater detail and try and understand how first of all, how the system's performing. Number two, what the ridership is doing and how we're reacting to that or not. So I think that my inclination is to believe that trying to incorporate all of that information into a monthly report is just going to be too much. Yeah.
Well, I guess my thing is more so defining what we're doing so somebody can write it into the contract. So,
Right.
So we basically want to add cancellation to current report, add another paragraph that speaks to the annual review.
Yep.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Okay, so the way that I've written it down is add cancellations to the monthly report data, and then annually do a January month deep dive. And I think what I liked was the format we did before. I don't know if you were there, Glenn, or not, but we came over and sat in you guys' office, and y'all had your team assembled, and we dove into the Avail system. I think something like that, let's see, a half day, would be really effective. That way you can ask questions and follow-up questions on that level of data. So that's the way I understand it. And then after we leave that point, I had one other point that I wanted to make, but does that kind of get us resolved on that? In addition to adding some more specific scope items to the strategic plan. So what are some of the things that we want, with the understanding that the strategic plan that we get this year is probably not going to be as robust as a strategic plan that we might get in a future year once we've built this foundation.
Excellent summary.
So the second thing that I would point out, which speaks, I think, a little bit more to the strategic plan and the importance of it, is the data is helpful in getting us to look at kind of specific problems within how they're operating. And those are things that I think we intuitively connect with the transit service. So we all want, I think, more people to use public transportation. And so it makes sense that we would look at things like on-time performance and those specific metrics. That's half of the conversation about why we choose to use public transportation or why we choose to travel the way that we do. So just the existence of the facility. So for example, if there's not a sidewalk, then we're probably less likely to walk. Or if there's not a bike lane, we're less likely to bike. Or if the bus route doesn't exist, or if the bus doesn't show up on time. That's half of the conversation. And I want to make sure that we don't miss the second half of the conversation, which is where we find ourselves, because our transit woes in Birmingham are not unique to Birmingham. It's fairly consistent across the United States that bus systems have become much lower utilized than they were in the past, and they're all kind of struggling, and they have these long headways. So a bus might come by every hour or so. So the other half of the conversation that we don't think about, which is more within the city's court, is frankly how close together we build things. So if we build things in a very auto-oriented fashion, which is what we've done, we spread everything out, then it's too expensive to connect everything with the sidewalk. It's too expensive to cover everything with bus transit. And so I want to make sure that we don't miss that in Birmingham and nationally, we've got to figure out how to build things closer together so that we can actually serve them with transit. Because the way that our transit system is set up in Birmingham, just like nationally, it's very fragile and it's not very resilient. And so if there's a bus driver shortage, then all of a sudden, a bus that was supposed to come every hour is only coming every 2 hours, and that's just basically a collapse of the service, essentially, versus if a bus was coming every 15 minutes or every half hour, and all of a sudden they're a driver down, the bus can still come every half hour or even every hour. And so if we can also focus on the other half of the conversation about how we move, which is how we get destinations closer together in a more walkable, transit-oriented fashion, then our partners at the Transit Authority can more effectively serve us with transit. But right now, we're built in America in such a way where their resources are having to be spread too thin, and so we are not very resilient and cannot be effective with transit. And so to put that into some tangible next steps, we didn't get to this very kind of spread out built environment overnight, and so it's going to take us a while to reel things back in and start building more transit-oriented walkable developments. A very tangible next step that we're pursuing right now as a city is reviewing our parking requirements for private developments. So we're proposing to remove parking requirements for new developments so that developers can choose how much parking they want to build as opposed to requiring them to build really big parking lots, which forces that spreading out of destinations and goes against us creating walkability. So that's a long-winded thing to say, but it's so easy for us to focus on the first half of the conversation, which is the facility, but that second half is just going to undermine everything that we do on that first half if we don't get destinations closer together. We can never build that many sidewalks. We can never provide bus service for that sprawling environment. We've got to get things more condensed. So a first step in that is to focus on those parking requirements, but there's a whole lot more after that. So.
Yeah, it's definitely an important tool in our toolbox in terms of incentivizing the city to grow in a way that's more sustainable. So transportation. I include transportation amongst that tool in the toolbox as a way to make projects more attractive, in a way that not only helps us, but makes the system work more efficiently. So one of my gripes about the way the current public transit is organized is that we've largely been relegated to a one-size-fits-all model for decades. And so we have, been offered one tool to perform a task, and it crosses multiple jurisdictions, and so you have, that's how you get to 45 minute, an hour and a half headways that at some point don't make any sense for people who have access to alternatives. So
we need to put up the partition. There's another call meeting at 3. So
Okay.
if you want to pause so everyone can shoot.
Okay.
Are you done?
I think we may be able to wrap it up in 5 minutes. So, all right. So I think, is everybody on the same page in terms of what our expectations are? I'm okay with us going ahead and moving this out of committee with the understanding that when this comes before the council, it'll have the changes that we've discussed today incorporated.
Will we be able to send it to him in advance? And
If you'll
Yes.
do that. I think we understand what you want in the document, but we'll let you review it before next Wednesday, before we submit, well, this Wednesday, before we submit for next week.
Okay. All right, everybody on the same page?
yeah, I move approval with the discussed changes.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye. All right, that motion passes. Pitts has been out for some time.
Okay, I guess that's why
Okay,
these
yes,
gentlemen are here.
we are still gathering information on that. He was doing a lot of this on his own, so we're still piecing it together on the process. It's coming, but it's a slow process. There was no protocol put in place, so he was doing a lot of this stuff. There was nothing. It's like nobody else knew exactly what he was doing when he did things, so we're trying to follow his steps and trying to find out. I can't ask him, he's still hospitalized, so I can't actually talk to him. So we're still trying to gather that information right now. So we're trying to put it together right now. It's just a lot of things were done. There was no protocol. He was doing a lot of stuff. One man was doing all that for years.
Right.
And of course, he went down, and we don't know. He left off at a certain point, but those people are at a standstill because I don't know where he was in the process of getting their stuff in. So we're still trying to contact people.
Yeah, just let us work with Attorney Bernard to see the legal process, so we won't have to hold anything.
Right.
This is my first time hearing about it, so I'm aware now.
Okay. All right. All right, I think that's it.
Move adjournment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
This floor stays here. This floor stays here.
Hey.